We are back talking about the Miami Dolphins, one of the most exciting offensive fantasy teams to watch. Can't get over the hump in the playoffs, but we'll see if that changes. We are here looking at their 2024 fantasy outlook for this team. We are recording this on August 8th. You're probably watching this August 15th-ish. Keep that in mind if some kind of injury happens. And we're just going to jump right into it with these Dolphins. It starts with the quarterback, Tua, who they paid, and I forgot to make that transparent, so I can't use my Tua graphic. But I'll read it off here. Tua's ADP is 106. He's going in round 9 as the QB 14, so maybe you can get him a little bit later. Surprisingly, and I don't know if a lot of people would know this off the top of their head, Tua led the NFL in passing yards last year with 4,624 yards. In terms of fantasy for last year, it wasn't that great, though. Like, it was fine because he was healthy. So you look at the overall number, and it's like, okay, he was QB9. Awesome. Mostly because he played every game. Then you look at the average in points per game, he was QB19 in points per game. So that's a little concerning because that's not helping you win. That's not helping you win. Now, it's helping you in that, yeah, he's there, but not helping you win leagues, that's for sure. He was better in 2022. He averaged 18.4 points per game as QB 11. So it's interesting with Tua because he doesn't run at all, like literally nothing. He's one of those statues, even though he's a young guy. You think, oh, maybe he can move a little bit. No. So even if he leads the league in passing yards with 4,600 yards and throws 30 touchdowns like he did, that's just not quite enough to be like a true difference maker at the fantasy position. He needs to get to 35 touchdowns, which he probably could. So I've been talking about it a lot, like the range of quarterbacks that I personally, if I don't take the Lamars or Anthony Richardsons of the world, I'm going to target the group of guys that we've been talking about over and over: Goff, Herbert, Lawrence, Cousins, Stafford. Tua is in that mix as well, but I think he's like at the very bottom of, like, if just something drastically goes wrong and like some team takes 3 quarterbacks or I'm at pick 12 and the entire round takes quarterbacks and I have to stay with Tua, okay, but he's kind of at the bottom of like the list of those guys. So I don't know if you feel the same there, Dad, if you like Tua a little bit more.
Yeah, I like him. Maybe I don't love him, but all those other quarterbacks that you mentioned, there's guys I like more. I think I did realize that he had a lot of yards last year, and he had a pretty good year. He's thrown to Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill typically is a 1,500 yard guy, so and the passing offense seems pretty prolific, but I guess I didn't realize his fantasy value is a little watered down.
Yeah. We do have to bring up, Raheem Mostert had freaking 20 rushing touchdowns, or 18, I think it was. Achane had 8 himself. So, like, are they going to have almost 30 rushing touchdowns? Maybe not. They're going to have a lot. They're going to run the ball, that's for sure. But, could that drop to 20 and then Tua gets 6 more? Easily. So I should point that out, and that could bump him from like that, he's not that great, to, okay, he's a low-end QB1. Those 6 touchdowns definitely would do that. So, it's just I'm not the biggest Tua fan. I just feel a little bit more confident with those other guys. I don't hate it. Again, like if I want to wait, a long time for a quarterback and I get Tua, that's fine. But yeah, just something to note there, because I think the perception of it is like, oh, Miami, Tyreek Hill's awesome, right? Miami's offense is awesome, then Tua must be awesome. And it's like, for fantasy, like actually he's kind of, a little bit average, slightly above average. So now it really gets interesting when we talk about Achane. Achane here, this graphic I made correctly. Going into his second year, 16.1 points per game last year. could not stay healthy. I think he was injured in preseason, and then he got injured multiple times in the regular season, which was the biggest issue with Achane. But you look at some of those games and that 3-week stretch and 49.3, 25.5, and 21, and then he gets hurt, and then he comes back in week 13 and puts up 24 points. And then, he has some dud games in there, but holy crap, Achane is all the way up to round 2 as the RB10. And it's like, man, if you love gambling and you want to hit the home run, like Achane's your guy, He is your guy. Let me get your thoughts on him. Like, it sounds like you're going to be kind of out on this value for him, right?
Well, at that point, yeah. I mean, last year it was kind of he was a rookie, and everybody knew he was fast and kind of a smaller guy, and he had some really killer games, but 200 yards, 101 yards, 151 yards, three of those games right in a row. But then the rest of the year, it was just like, yeah, okay. 7 carries, 47 yards, 9 carries, 32. So it's going to be seriously feast or famine with this guy. And the deal is, are you playing him as your starting running back, or maybe he's your RB3 or something like that? And then you're expecting him to hit, to do something, score a bunch of points. Then you're going to get tired of it. Then you're going to sit him down. Then he's going to have a 200-yard game. Then you're going to get pissed off because you had him on the bench or something.
Yeah.
But I don't want to deal with him.
Yeah,
fantasy-wise.
Yeah, and like you said, like if he's your flex, you love him,
Yeah.
But he's potentially your RB1 here. Probably your RB1 because unless you get Breece Hall or Bijan, like maybe you can start, McCaffrey, Achane, whatever. He's your RB1 or RB2 on your team. And yeah, just so much of his production came in those blowout games. The 70-20 game against Denver, he had the 200 yards and 4 total touchdowns.
Yeah.
When they blew out Washington, he had 100 total yards and 2 touchdowns. When they blew out, there was one more game, or when they kind of dominated the Giants, he had over 150 yards and a touchdown. Like those 3 games. My only concern is people taking him here thinking they're going to increase his workload, because I don't think they are.
No, I don't think so either.
I think they know that he's too valuable to their offense and they want him healthy. This is a playoff aspiration team. They made the playoffs last year, haven't been able to get over the hump. They know what Achane provides to their team, and they need him healthy at the end of the year. And so, like, they're not going to increase his workload. And something I point out to people, which I don't know if people realize this, Mostert missed the last 2 weeks last year, week 17 and 18. And so you think, Achane, who was pretty good in those games, he must have just like 90% of the carries or snaps or whatever. He played 48% of the snaps and 63. So essentially he played 55% of the snaps. Jeff Wilson was still being used. They took Mostert's gone. They plugged in Jeff Wilson for 50% of the snaps. So like, that's just how this team operates. That's how the 49ers operated until they got McCaffrey. And I think that's how the Dolphins are going to operate. And part of the reason I think he's this high is because I think people are thinking he's going to get more, and I don't think he's going to get more than what he got last year. So if he stays healthy all year, he's going to be awesome. He's going to be awesome. But that's a concern for sure. Yeah, man. I don't hate anyone for trying to win. He could literally win you your league if he performs how we think he's going to perform. So I don't blame anyone trying to do that, but it's just you're taking a big risk in the second round, and I generally like to limit my risks for the first 4 or 5 picks and get guys who I know are going to be good and produce. And he's going right around like Derrick Henry, Pacheco, Josh Jacobs range, ETN. Like, those are some guys that are going to produce some numbers. and can carry a load. So where the real value is Mostert. I know he's
Yeah.
32 years old. He was just the RB3 last year, maybe RB2 in total points, RB3 in points per game. He's in round 7 as RB25. I don't understand this at all because they're not going away from Mostert. They're
And
not.
and, and here's the amazing part to me is the Dolphins have had chances to walk away from him contract wise and just say, not thank you for your service. We're done and we're moving on to somebody else. But they keep on re-signing him for a year or something, you know. They've done that at least 2 or 3 times. You know, he had those good years in San Francisco, but he was hurt. So he comes to the Dolphins and you know, with Coach McDaniels there and I thought they would walk away from him this year, you know, in this off season, but they didn't. So he's still there. So they're still going to use him. You know, he's not going to have the ridiculous touchdowns. Let's make sure if he does, you know, that'll be a miracle or something, you know, but he, you know, he's definitely a guy you want to pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. If he is going to be in round 7 in every draft, I'm having him. He's on my team. He's on all my teams because again, they're going to use him. I don't care how many. Mostert's going to get a lot of carries. Yeah, like you said, is he going to be RB3 or RB2 overall with 20 touchdowns? No, he doesn't have to be to where you're getting him. You're getting him as RB25. Like, it doesn't make sense to me at all that he's going this far. And yeah, he's kind of like Montgomery last year, in my opinion, where it's just like this guy's going to be top 15 if he stays healthy, you know. And he doesn't. I know he's old. He has less than 700 carries in his career. In his career since 2015, less than 700 carries. 200 of them of his 675 came last year. You know, comparing that with like other old guys like Derrick Henry has 2,000 carries in his career, you know, like, so I know he's old, but the carries aren't quite there, which could mean more. So, yeah, I think it's an incredible value. They should not be 5 rounds apart in Achane and Mostert. They just should not. Jalen Wright is also the rookie. Maybe that's why people are a little bit worried, but I don't think they should be. Jalen Wright was drafted again, round 3, maybe 4, I forget. He's also being drafted in fantasy at round 11, RB45. And we talked about Blake Corum, and we're a little bit hesitant, like, oh, round 10 guy. I think he was round 10. I still have, oh, no, I don't, but I think it was round 10. Jalen Wright, round 11, I'm actually okay with because you start looking at who he's going around. And he's going around the other handcuffs, right? The other handcuffs in Marshawn Lloyd, Ty Chandler, Chuba Hubbard, Zach Charbonnet. He's going in that range of guys. And my opinion is if one of these guys get hurt, either Achane or Mostert, Jalen Wright's going to be awesome. Like, whatever running back's touching the ball in Miami is going to be awesome. And all he needs is one injury.
And they're going to run the ball. Just like we've said, Miami is going to run the ball, you know?
Yes. And
somebody in the backfield, whoever it is, you know, and maybe 2 guys they're going to get, you know.
That's the point. It will be 2 guys. Like,
right.
He's 3rd on the depth chart. He's one injury away from being a major contributor for this team because they're going to use multiple guys. Even Mostert, even though he scored the 20 touchdowns last year, Mostert was playing 55% of the snaps. They were using guys like Jeff Wilson and Salvin Ahmed, right? Like, those guys were being used when Achane was out or when Mostert was out. That's their philosophy. So Jalen Wright is like, man, if one of these guys get hurt, he's going to step in potentially, and he's going to be awesome, most likely, because whoever's running the ball for this team is going to be awesome. And he's literally one injury away, and Mostert's an injury. You know, we like Mostert, but he's very injury prone in his career. And Achane's, 195-pound back that was injured 3 times last year. So, like, the path for Jalen Wright is there, and he's probably not gonna do anything when those two guys are healthy. Maybe he's more for kickoffs, but he's another fast guy, explosive. Get him in space, and he can bust off a 60-yard run. So I love Jalen Wright there. It's like potential league winner in round 11. So anything to add on that running back room?
No, it's going to produce. I mean, the hard part is figuring out who it's going to be.
Yep. Mike McDaniel, by the way, is he comes from the San Francisco tree. He was a running backs a run game coordinator for San Francisco before he became their offensive coordinator. That's his bread and butter. Like he knows kind of the limitations of Tua, and he knows that if they can run the ball effectively with Tyreek Hill and having Tyreek Hill and Waddle out there, like they're going to be very good offensively. So speaking of Tyreek Hill, just got a bunch of money given to him. He's 30 years old. He's the wide receiver 2, the third off the board. Most drafts, it goes McCaffrey, Lamb, and Tyreek are going in the top 3. Half PPR, you probably lean McCaffrey. PPR, honestly, Tyreek Hill could be as high as number 1. No one's going to argue it. He was the number 1 wide receiver last year in points per game. He did miss the playoffs for your fantasy playoff team, which kind of sucks, but I think they're really trying to get him 2,000 yards last year receiving. Didn't quite get there. I don't know. There's nothing to say about Tyreek Hill. He's awesome. I mean, anything you want to add?
He should be right in that top 10. He's going to give you yards and touchdowns. Catches, yards, touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, I know people were worried about when he first went to Miami. He's like, his 2 years in Miami are better than anything he ever did with the Chiefs. So back-to-back, 119 catches, 1,700-yard seasons, 1,800 last year, 13 touchdowns. Like, yeah, there's nothing to talk about. Where I think it gets even a little bit more interesting, this is kind of the HN Mostert, Tyreek Waddle. Waddle, who is going in round 3 here. As wide receiver 17. You see the numbers there. His rookie year, he was like that possession receiver, had 100 passes, was wide receiver 23. 2022, when Tyreek Hill came over, I know we were worried about Waddle. He was still 13th overall, 13 points per game. Last year, 11.6, 23rd overall. But, man, this guy was beat up a lot. I know he didn't miss a lot of games, but he was like in and out of games, in and out. He missed 3 games. But you look at some of the snap percentages, and he was definitely in and out of a lot of other games. So I think he's another incredible value for the Dolphins. He's basically at the 3-4 turn as wide receiver 17. I think he's going to finish right around there or higher. I like Waddle this year. I think this offense definitely can produce multiple guys, and I really do think they're trying to get Tyreek that 2,000. And that kind of affected Waddle a little bit. But, yeah, just the amount of injuries he had, I think, added up last year. So where are you at with Jalen Waddle?
I like the guy. I wish he'd get showcased a little more. I know it's kind of hard with Tyreek Hill there. But, yeah, last year it was a little slightly off a little bit. But I think – I'd be happy to have this guy on my fantasy team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think people realize, like, he had 72 catches in 14 games. That was so a 17-game pace is 87. He had 1,015 yards in 14 games. So he was that would have been a 1,200-yard receiver. Like he was on pace for very similar numbers last year. In 2022, what he was doing last year. So, yeah, I think he's just an incredible value. And I'm in on Waddle. I think he's going to be good this year. He's a good player, and Miami's offensive system's amazing. So, Odell Beckham's on the team. He's just barely being drafted. If you play 17 rounds, he is being drafted. I mean, he's a nice veteran presence for them, maybe a third option. They do need a consistent third option, consistent safe third option, because good teams in the playoffs, and I think this is part of their issue. Good teams in the playoffs can shut down one or two guys. It was the issue with the Packers all those years where they were making the playoffs every year. Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, MVP, and Devontae Adams, best receiver in football. And then they get to the playoffs and it's like, okay, we'll shut down Devontae Adams. What else do you have? And they would lose. Yeah. So good teams know how to do that in the playoffs. So I do think they need that consistent third option. I'm not drafting Odell Beckham. No one should really. He's a free agent, maybe waiver wire guy. Anything you want to add to that?
No, you're right on. They have to, Miami when they got to go to Kansas City when it's 0 degrees or something like that, or go to Buffalo and play January games. That's kind of a problem. So, it's not only the weather, but they need to do a little better in the try and get a home game and get the ball rolling there on the playoffs and stuff like that. Get a little bit of a momentum going.
Yep. 100% agree there. Willie Snead's on this team. I didn't know that. That's kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, they have a couple, Braxton Berrios, who was making plays for them last year, River Craycraft, guys like that are still there. Malik Washington's a rookie that's intriguing, but none of these guys are relevant for 2024. Jonnu Smith is one of those, I forget what the rule is, but they signed him like before the free agency period. I guess he was a cut or he was a free agent. Like he is, anyways, they signed him in like January, February. I think he actually be pretty decent for this team. Like we just talked about, they need a consistent third option. He's a pass catching tight end who has had decent seasons in the past. And is it crazy to think that like he is third on this team in targets and they kind of use him and Odell Beckham get like 70, 80 targets. He gets 50, 60 catches and 600 yards. I don't think it's crazy to think that Jonnu does that. So it's someone to pay attention to. Like he's probably another waiver wire guy. He's not being drafted, but he might be a waiver wire streamer guy later on in the year. So anything you want to add to Jonnu?
No, I think he might produce something. He's typical tight end, maybe 50 catches, 500 yards, or along those lines. And I know, we talked about Tua and his yardage, but I think Miami recognized they need a tight end, to take up the slack, when they're shutting down their wide receivers a little bit. So,
yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think he could be a solid player. Like, again, I generally wait on tight ends if I don't get one of the top guys. And he's one where, like, you don't really, he's way down there. But, yeah, I mean, he's intriguing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a top 15 season or something. I think he was top 15 last year. He's 17th overall, amazingly. So there you have it, Dolphins. Obviously, you have the studs. I think we're kind of out on Tua for the most part. I think we're both out on Achane. I don't know if I play in multiple leagues, I might take a chance on him in one league and see what happens. But Mostert, Tyreek is obvious. Mostert and Waddle are the guys I think in terms of value. I think we're really, especially Mostert, are the guys that we're.
Achane would be a great best ball player.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's gonna be very interesting, like to see. And I do think part of the high ADP is like best ball players as well, because he is great in best ball. So, but that is all. We'll be back moving along to the Minnesota Vikings. So I think we're about 17, 18 teams in, maybe 19, getting there slowly but surely. So we'll see you all in the next video talking about